everybody's a rival.
So this is going to be a very, very challenging game in every way, shape, and form.
Iowa.
That's what college football is. Every week it's playoff football.
Best part about being 6-0, we get a chance to go 7-0 next week. Go Tigers.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to First Take. Look who's in Slinging A's chair. Our guy, Paul Finebaum. Looking good on.
No sling for me.
How are you
I
doing?
will say this.
The right
I
side
will
of the
say
desk.
this, Molly. Molly, hold on. Since you want to say slinging A, let me speak, please. Y'all are a little bit late to the party. And the reason why y'all are a little bit late is because I took off the sling 3 weeks ago. Had y'all utilized this footage while I was suffering, you would have had a stronger case. But I haven't worn the sling in 3 weeks, and it ain't coming back.
Hey, you know what, Stephen A? I think you could get back in that ring. You know what I mean? You could do it.
I can. And I will.
You can do, yeah, there you go. That's the attitude you will.
Stephen A., I'm happy your suffering's over, and I didn't mean to be laughing about your pain.
It's all right.
Shakespeare said, "You don't protest
I'm
too
just saying,
much."
y'all got to take advantage of it while I was sitting in that chair.
Man.
I know, but it was a funny moment.
We got the
for us. We
receipts,
appreciate
Stephen
it.
A. We got them forever.
All right, Paul, let me ask you this. Ohio State, Georgia tied at 3.
You sure we don't want to complete this
No.
4-week-old story here?
I'm getting in trouble with Stephen A. here. Which team is better right now?
I think it's Ohio State because they look more complete. Now, Georgia is a really good team. They have an offensive line that resembles some really bad NFL teams. I don't mean that disparagingly, but I mean they are really quite good. But with Justin Fields, good receivers, their defense is played extraordinarily well. Under Ryan Day, they just seem looser. They don't seem just burdened down like they were last year with Urban Meyer. Remember the last couple of years, they have lone games at Iowa and Purdue. This team looks like it's going to run the table.
We're going to Clemson this week.
I heard.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't be there.
We heard you're busy.
For the record, and I wanted to go.
We want you there.
I wanted to be at Clemson, but someone would not let me go.
Well, anyway.
I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but
it wasn't me.
Look, Trevor Lawrence, who looked like
me.
the truth last year, particularly in the championship game.
He did.
Did not look the same early in the season. You made the point, look, they don't have any other high-profile regular season games, as it were, for him to re-enter the Heisman race, in your opinion. But how do you think the team actually stacks up, Trevor Lawrence and company, to the championship squad of last year?
They look inferior based on what we've seen so far. And you know, I think it would be interesting when you guys get down there because Trevor has talked about missing receivers, not being able to run the offense efficiently. He mentioned that he was a little bit confused against North Carolina. He's confused against North Carolina. What's going to happen when he sees some better opposition? I think they have been burdened down by all of the hype. Trevor Lawrence was the greatest quarterback in history. It was the greatest team last year. And I think there's also, when you face a schedule as uninspiring as theirs, you get bored. And you know, Texas A&M was hyped as a big game. It really wasn't that big of a deal.
Is that on Dabo, though? Because, you know, you look at who Dabo's competing against at this point, and Nick Saban, his team doesn't, even through those dominant years where it was foregone conclusion, they didn't look bored. They stayed dominant.
Well, listen, Clemson has started slow before. And when you get there, listen, I know the Clemson spin. I've been hearing it since January 7th last year when they beat Alabama by 28 points. But they just don't look the same. And part of the reason they don't look the same is their defense is not the same. Just look at the NFL draft next year. But to me, Trevor Lawrence, is still a very good quarterback. And I feel badly for him on one respect because he really won't be seen on a national stage. I know they have a national game this weekend against Florida State, but Florida State today versus 2013 is night and day.
It's supposed to be a butt kicking. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be.
It should be. And a guy who may be one of the best players in the country is not going to be on the Heisman stage because of it's not Dabo's fault. He had South Carolina at the end, A&M. That's not bad in today's world of non-conference scheduling. The ACC is putrid.
the top 4 teams in the nation right now, according to Paul Finebaum, is who?
It's Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. And I think if LSU wins this weekend, they might move up a little bit. And after that, Stephen A., I know we're about to get into something here. I just can't put Clemson in there based on what I've seen. You and I argue this all the time, but it's not about what happened last year. It's not about the year before or the year before that. This is not a Lifetime Achievement Award. This is about what we see this year. That's what the committee tells us every year when they drag the chairman out in front of the camera and he defends their body of work.
Well, let me piggyback off of that. I need justification as to why you would have Ohio State #1. I do know they've won every game by at least 24 points. They've been up by at least 17 at the half. One could easily argue the same kind of things that you're saying about Clemson in terms of not being tested this year is the same thing that you could say about Ohio State, particularly with Fields needing to prove that as phenomenal of an athlete as he is, that he could actually throw the football, particularly if they're in a nail-biter. What do you say to those who might question you having Ohio State that high?
Well, the biggest difference would be this, Stephen A. Ohio State didn't need one of their opponents to miss a 2-point conversion. And I know that's where I'm landing, but that's all I have to deal with right now. We're 6 weeks into the season, and Ohio State will be tested. I mean, they'll get Wisconsin in a couple weeks. And I know the Nebraska game was high profile, but Nebraska really isn't all that great. They'll see Penn State. They'll see Michigan. And I think all those teams are better than what Clemson has seen or will see the rest of the way.
That's one of the things I actually love about college football. And even with the playoff format, you still have it to an extent. It's not, in every other sport, it's just whether you win, right? Even if you win, our last guest, if you win by 1 point, but not in college football. Actually, how you win has an impact. That said, Notre Dame has 1 loss. It's to Georgia on the road. Georgia's one of your top 4 teams. Any scenario you see where Notre Dame can make the playoff?
I don't, but when you're using the same premise that we are with Clemson, they certainly could end up having a far more impressive resume. I mean, what Notre Dame has to do, piggybacking off of what you said a minute ago, Max, they need to look impressive. They need to destroy Southern Cal on Saturday night, which they're capable of doing. And then as you look the rest of the way, they'll have some high-profile matchups. A win at Michigan is going to give them some juice, in spite of what we've all said. And that's really
You're just writing it off like that, a definite win at Michigan?
I'm not writing Michigan off yet. After all, they did score, 3 points or 7 points or 10 points against Iowa the other day for that scintillating win.
Well, Paul, before I let you get out of here,
Okay.
I'd be remiss in neglecting to bring up Baker Mayfield because obviously you covered him extensively when he was at Oklahoma winning the Heisman Trophy. You know what you knew about him before most of the NFL world obviously knew about him. Talk to us about what you're seeing from Baker Mayfield now, not just on the field but off the field, and what do you make of everything that he's been going through thus far this season?
I don't like it, and I've heard some people say over the last 2 days, Stephen A., that's Baker Mayfield. You don't want to stop him being great. He's great because he's got that attitude. But I'm really disturbed by it. I think it gets in the way. It was okay to be that way in college. I always felt like he was trying to channel his inner Johnny Manziel and be the bad boy of college football. But I don't think you need to be that way in the pros. You need to show a little leadership. And we were talking the other day, and I'm still not sure where the truth lies on what Richard Sherman saw or didn't see. But
he did come out and apologize.
Okay,
yeah.
but be a leader, display some class once in a while, which I don't think Baker Mayfield really ever does. And I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's having a great year. I think he's a marked man in many respects, but I just think he ought to grow up. I mean, it's time.
Seems like some other players in the league feel that way as well. Paul, always great to see you.
Thank you.
And that'll do it until next week, our next edition with Paul Finebaum. Coming up next, Mike Tomlin is on Dan Snyder's short list to replace Jay Gruden. This year's season of Hard Knocks, his rookie season cut short in week 1 when he tore his rotator cuff and labrum against the Broncos. Jonathan, kind enough to to join us now. Stephen A. can relate. He actually just had the same injury. How are we doing, Jonathan? Thanks for being with us.